Zootopia is probably one of my favourite Disney films of all time across all the different studios. There's something about it that's always drawn me in. By the time it was released, I was firmly in my post-high school cringelord phase. I'd spent my teen years scoffing and sneering at kiddie films and degrading them and those who enjoyed them. After all, I watched more sophisticated movies that got nominated for Academy Awards. Oh, your film grossed more than $5 million at the worldwide box office? Pfft, that's too mainstream for me, I'm afraid. I think you'll find I have far more discerning tastes than that. It's the same insufferable mentality that you see whenever a big hit or a blockbuster's released, as those type of people wonder why their extremely niche interest movie doesn't get the praise and recognition they think it deserves, as opposed to those mass appeal family or action films. Truly, one of nature's mysteries. I went to Zootopia with my girlfriend though, and it proved to be an absolute sensation. I loved this movie so much. It just radiates joy and zeal that I can't really explain. It's everything I would have wanted to watch when I was a little kid. It's just fun, pure fun, that's what it is. I think for the most part, the world agreed as well. After all, it grossed over $1 billion at the box office off $150 million, which is truly nothing to sniff at, and it was a hit with critics and audiences alike, with a 98% and a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. It even won an Oscar! So suffice to say it did well for itself. I'm honestly surprised it took this long to get a sequel. It'll be close to 10 years since the first one came out. Now we're getting all the sequels though. Gotta recover from all those box office bombs, I guess. Because I enjoyed the movie so much though, I had for years not really thought all that much about it in depth. I just enjoyed it and moved on. It's the thing that normal people do, but it's just not standard fare for me. I love to overanalyze things to the point of ridiculousness, and it's even more fun when it's a film, book, or show that people would tell you not to think too deeply about. Then, a while back, I started to think more in depth about the story and the world that was created, and I found a few things that I was confused about. They were more normal things though, like talking about the somewhat clumsy racial profiling storyline that they based the whole movie around. I won't get too deep into that here, but you can watch that video if you're at all interested. But today, I decided to go a bit out there and talk about something that has no real relevance on the plot whatsoever, and is a result of deep diving and overanalyzing elements of the world that you're supposed to simply take at face value and never think about again other than to say, oh, that's pretty cool. I've done this before with Frozen, where I talked about how the world of Arendelle, the kingdom and the government, just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and that the kingdom by all rights should have crumbled to dust before the events of the movie. Well, I have some gripes about the world of Zootopia that I want answered. Well, I guess answered with better answers than just, bro, it's a kid's film, don't think too hard about it. Well, damn it, I want to think hard about it because I have nothing better to do with my life. So my first major query about Zootopia that I just don't understand is the city itself. How can this place exist at all? It doesn't make any sense to me. For reference, or recap in case you haven't watched the film, the city of Zootopia is set in a world of anthropomorphic animals. It's considered the mecca of animal kind. Based on where Judy lives, regions outside the city, they're far more segregated. Grassland creatures live in grasslands. Cold weather creatures live in cold weather climates. Desert creatures live in desert climates. Jungle creatures in jungles. You get where I'm going with this. But Zootopia is different. It's a place where all can go and live and work. A land of opportunity akin to New York City in real life. A melting pot of different animals working together to make the world a better place. As part of that promise of a utopian society, the city needs different areas for some of these animals to live. Whilst clearly they'd be able to visit different climates for an afternoon, you can't have certain species living in specific conditions. They're gonna die. So obviously they need the different districts that you see in the movie here. Locations like Sahara Square, Tundra Town, Savannah Central, Little Rodentia, Rainforest District. That's all well and good, and some of the areas do make sense. Savannah Central and Little Rodentia, for instance, they make sense. They're just general cityscapes with nothing special about them for the general animal population. I can also understand the concept of the Rainforest District. It's a large, uncultivated forest with sprinklers to help keep everything moist. And I'd assume there are large humidifiers and steam vents that continually create the mist, and thus keep the rainforest warm, humid, and wet, as the official Zootopia handbook describes. That being said though, they'd have to use a colossal amount of energy and water in order to keep this place as lush as it is, wouldn't they? It's like farming irrigation, which is a proven way to damage the environment. Oh well, a city and population not giving a shit about environmental degradation and damage. Sounds true to life to me. But where I have to draw the line is the existence of Tundra Town and Sahara Square. When I first started thinking about this franchise, I figured that each of the different regions were in some sort of eco-dome in order to make them work properly. Like I said, I understand the rainforest, and I think you could replicate those conditions at a great environmental cost. It's an open-air hothouse the size of a third of a city, or thereabouts based on this bird's eye view. Man, that's an absurd amount of energy and water they're using. Actually, I take it back. I don't actually think it would be possible for that district to exist in a society that is not sci-fi levels. They still just drive cars, not Star Wars style speeders. No chance. But to me, the other two districts are even more egregious and ridiculous. How the hell does Tundra Town exist? Apparently there's a climate wall, but no climate dome. Check it out, there's this lush green landscape that exists outside the city. So this area is probably warm in summer, cold in winter. It's your middle ground temperatures. Thus, this snowscape is going to always be exposed to the elements with known protection. The sun, potentially warm breezes, rain. So to combat this, they apparently have a climate wall to the south. They have mountains to the north and west, and water to the east. This climate wall apparently makes it cold enough to freeze. But has anybody ever seen what happens to your freezer when you leave the door open forever? Warm air is able to enter, and thus the ice melts. In order to maintain such an environment without it being enclosed, I feel like the climate wall would have to be shooting out some Arctic chill level winds full stop. We're talking extreme blizzard conditions at all times to combat the defrosting of Tundra Town from both air and the water that's just touching it. But if you're constantly blasting out that level of cold wind, I feel like everybody's actually just going to freeze to death, even the cold weather animals. It would be impossible to go outside for much time at all, and almost certainly no other animal could ever safely enter from the outside. Conversely, the energy required for such an endeavor would be ridiculously immense. And this is even acknowledged in law. My God, between this and the Rainforest District and then the actual city, imagine how much it costs to keep this place powered. Then we come to Sahara Square, the desert climate, which I assume was made by dumping a whole heap of sand in the confines of the region, whilst it's apparently kept hot from the output of the climate wall that we mentioned earlier for Tundra Town. Whilst it's creating cold climates in the north, a whole heap of heat is being released, and then, I presume, is blasted south with fans. The actual district apparently reaches temperatures of 102 degrees Fahrenheit, or around 38 degrees Celsius. Pretty toasty. But I would also assume that that has to be the average temperature diffused throughout the region. Imagine being next to the actual wall. It would be unbearably hot. It's like standing next to a giant furnace, and I don't think it would actually be possible to live there. But based on this bird's eye view map, there are actually houses there. Also, I feel like for the hot air from this wall to impact the whole region, would it not have to be blown pretty hard to the south? So wouldn't sandstorms/dust storms be common and debilitating in Sahara Square? Sounds terrible to me. Also, wouldn't all this air temperature difference cause some pretty gnarly storms? Would that not happen as well? I honestly don't know, but it certainly feels like a recipe for disaster. Surely natural wind would impact things too, and could push the cold or hot or humid air around into different districts at particular times. If air currents are going north, wouldn't the tundra cop that massively hot air from the climate wall and start to melt shit left and right? Or what if it's going west? Could hot air not be pushed into the actual cityscape and make things extra sweaty or cold or whatever? It beggars belief. It sounds like a logistical nightmare. And this city really just shouldn't exist at all. I know it's a kid's film. Why are you talking about this sort of thing at all? But I've had my fun and I've made my point. I actually do not think that this city is in any way possible to exist, but it is what it is. I don't really have any more major complaints about the city itself, but just one more about the society of Zootopia itself. It's not enough to make its own video about, so I'll just tack it on here. What does the society of Zootopia eat? Because there's lots of carnivores in close proximity to prey species, so clearly there'd be some method of having overcome their natural instincts to hunt and kill and whatnot. But there is still that fear from prey, showing that surely there is still some sort of meat consumption. I looked it up and apparently they eat fish and bugs in order to get their meat. But what makes those species less anthropomorphized than mammals? Why are they not sapient? Are birds? Are reptiles? Apparently there are some reptiles because there's going to be a snake character in Zootopia too. So how do you morally justify eating fish and bugs in this context? Could you eat eggs? It's not a case like humans where we're the only sapient species and thus we don't have that same moral dilemma in the same way. There's veganism and vegetarianism, of course, but it's a little different when there would be thousands of species that are jointly coming together to decide that some species are less worthy of life and thus still fair game. It's just strange to me. What about dairy as well? Would dairy still be eaten in this society? I mean, surely this would be like turning up to the shops to buy bottled breast milk, drinking it, flavouring it, making it into cheese and yogurt, using it for cooking. Wouldn't it be a bit weird? Do you think they use milk substitutes like nut milk? They clearly bake and whatnot, so surely they have to substitute something if they don't use milk. Maybe they do use the real deal. But what type? Do you reckon they have lots of different species at the shops for you to peruse? Would there be fresh from the udder style farmer's market type milk? I hate myself for even thinking of this. I feel dirty. I don't want to even look at a glass of milk for a while. Regardless, there's not much else to say beyond that, and so I guess I'll leave you with that mental image. So with all that being said, these have all been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about what we've discussed today? Do you agree that the idea of Zootopia is a bit of an impossibility? What about the moral dilemma of the food they eat? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.